Okay, we seem to be functional. See where the microphone is set. Hello, welcome back. It's been a few weeks. I hope you've all survived and are well and healthy. Meanwhile, same old, same old. No, I've been working, been doing stuff. Had a big family party and various things that went with that. Been working on the books, of course, and working on the covers and working on all kinds of things. Let me see, what else was I going to tell you guys about? What's happened in the last 3 weeks while I've been off the air? Not a huge amount, really, in the sense of anything changing. We're still kind of locked into this whole pandemic thing. So, we go out, go out occasionally, go do things, but by and large, we're trying to not contribute to the problems. So, what else did I want to tell you guys about? Nothing. I've been trolling YouTube all day, but those of you who follow my various social media will probably see the results of some of those things, so I won't go into any details about it. Other than that, yeah, we're just going to read. What I'm going to read, however, because I was thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it. And since I'm still not sure what the long-term shape of this whole thing is going to be, I intend to keep doing things, but I don't know yet exactly what I'm going to do. So rather than read of the entirety of the Shadow March series all the way through all four, well, three more volumes since we just finished the first one. Excuse me, I am going to do some other things for a while, and one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to read some other books. I do still have a book of mine, or, well, actually ours, as I will explain in a moment, that I haven't read anything of to you guys. So that's what I'm going to read next. So for those of you who don't know it, I am going to actually read from The Dragons of Ordinary Farm. The Dragons of Ordinary Farm is the all-ages book that I wrote with Deborah Beale, wife and co-writer of this book. And because I think it's a good story, and even though it's technically an all-ages book, it's certainly not written down. It's not written down for kids or anything like that. It's definitely something that anybody of any age can get some value out of. So I'm going to read that book, which will only take me a few weeks, I think, because it's not that long. I might at some point also read the second book. The third one is still not finished yet, which is particularly sad when you consider that this volume came out in when? 2009. So it's already a 12-year-old book. Unfortunately, it was beset by a series of problems. One of them was that the original book and the series in general was sold to an editor who was starting her own line, her own, what's the word I'm looking for? Imprint is the technical publishing term. She was going to have her own imprint at HarperCollins. And just as we were finishing the first book, she and about a bunch of other editors were all let go at the same time. HarperCollins did a huge, I'm assuming, cost-saving maneuver of some kind. Anyway, they got rid of a huge chunk of writers, including this editor who was getting her own imprint with her name on it, which was going to be, a great place. And we were going to be, at least that was my impression, that we were going to be one of the flagship books for this new imprint. Instead, we were semi-orphaned at the company, not really the fault of the editor we were handed to, because she'd just been, her list, meaning the books that she was responsible for publishing that year, had just gone from like 18 to 60, something like that, because they had just taken all these books from these severed editors. Sounds like a Rob Zombie movie. Severed editors. Anyway, they had just taken all these books from all these editors they'd let go and handed them off to other editors who were already, as is the norm, I'm sure, in all aspects of the publishing industry, already overworked and probably underpaid. So as a result, our book was orphaned. And by the time the second book came around, I basically took the loss, had to pay back the money because I no longer felt that it was going to work out at HarperCollins with these books. And we never did find an American publisher, but we did have a British publisher. So there are English language versions of the second book, which is called The Secrets of Ordinary Farm, or The Secret of Ordinary Farm. I think it's The Secrets of Ordinary Farm. Anyway, and it's also, those of you in Europe may know that the volumes have both been published. Instead of Ordinary Farm, it's Tinker Farm in Germany, because the family name, as you'll see, is Tinker. But anyway, so I will read that book and then figure out what next. I might read some other first books of other series, as I did with Shadow March, namely reading the first Otherland book, or possibly the Dragon Bone Chair. So we'll see while I'm figuring out what the long-term plan is. So, okay, I think I've brought you up to date on that. You know what I'm going to read? No animals or children have died at our house lately. So everybody is still well and fairly healthy. What else? My parents' anniversary party, I think, went really nicely. A lot of people said nice things about our music, and I can certainly believe it of my brothers. I'm not so certain about myself. But then again, what are people going to say at a celebratory anniversary for two very lovely people who are celebrating their 60th anniversary on their 61st anniversary because of the pandemic? What are you going to say other than, we really liked the music? So, but yeah, at least nobody fled in horror. So, and my folks seemed happy, and that was really the only thing that mattered, is they finally got to celebrate their anniversary. I am one of those people who was actually there for both ends, because I was actually present when they were married. My dad, as I think of him, is not my actual biological father. I don't even know my biological father, which sounds more complicated than it is, but I won't bother to go into all the details. But anyway, so I was actually at the wedding, and I was 3. And when the wedding was over, my father, stepdad, but I always think of him as dad, my dad said to me, well, you can call me Daddy now. And me, thinking age 3 that meant we were all taking new names, I said, okay, you can call me Billy. He never did. But, I was just trying to get into the spirit of the thing, Well, okay, good. If I'd been a few years older, I probably would have said, you can call me Spider-Man or something like that, or Demetrius Waffle Truck, the kind of thing I would have said when I was about 12 or 13. But I was 3. So, hey, I did what I could with the material I had to work with at that age. Anyway, so that happened last weekend. As far as I can tell, it all went well. Certainly the guests had a good time, and my folks seemed to have a good time. So that's a major commitment off my calendar now, and I can start concentrating on all the other things, like not being ready for Christmas, which I'm already starting to work on. And so far, I'm not ready. So I'm doing well. Anyway, all right, let me check in here since we've had a long lead in. Let me check in with everybody. And just before I do, say, lovely to be back. And I hope you're all well. And thank you for bearing with me on the new time. Several people suggested we could do it a little earlier. And so that's fine with me. So anyway, let's see who we've got. Ronnie, good morning to you. Pleasure to have you. Wouter, good morning. The visitors are here early. Well, visitors. That's why I never have visitors. But anyway, lovely to see you, and when you get a chance to listen, I hope you'll enjoy it. John, hello, John. Good to see you. Rosalba, a pleasure. And thank you for welcoming me back. It's good to be back. Ilva, hello, sweetie. Lovely to see you. Well, not see you, but lovely to have the interaction with you. Good to be back. Kristen, hello, how are you? Margaret, good to see you too. Olaf, my friend, a pleasure. And there is my wonderful mother-in-law, Hazel. Good morning, Hazel. Miss you too. We miss you a lot. If it wasn't for the fact that you were so good at posting pictures of kids and stuff and grandkids and great grandkids on Facebook, we would know nothing. So anyway, lovely to see you, Hazel. Kisses and stuff and hugs and everything from us here. Everybody's fine, and we miss you too. Jessica, hello. Good morning. Good to see you. Waving from behind your breakfast bowl. Anna, hello, Anna. Good morning. And with your son, well, tell Mikhail I said hello also. Jeremy, and there's Jeremy. Hello, Jeremy. You're my bud. Good to see you. James. Yes, the anniversary recital did go well. We did basically a bluegrass set, and so I was doing a lot of donk, 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 which is okay. That's like basically, as far as bluegrass goes, that's pretty much the extent of my capacity. So no problem there. Mark, good to see you. Good morning. Jessica, yes, I already said hello, but I'll say it again. Yes, the party was fun, and thank you for asking. Holger, hello, good to see you too. Who else have we got here? Petra and Christina, hello, both of you. I'm assuming Petra and Christina, as opposed to Petra and Christine. I might be wrong, but in Germany they usually pronounce the last the last letter in something like Christina, even when it ends in an E, whereas in America, it's always silent. I might be wrong, so you can let me know. Anthony, hello, good to see you. Who else have we got here? Dev, hello, Dev. I don't know if we checked in before. If not, a pleasure to see you, and thank you for checking in. Mark, we already read Tell Chaser Song, actually. And you can find it. It's the taped versions. It is. Yeah, Kristen, if you're testing there, I can see you. So what else have we got? Everybody, Cliff. Hi, Cliff. Good to see you. James says Billy Williams actually has a pretty cool sound to it. Actually, this is going to be meaningless to almost everybody in Europe, but Billy Williams was a really good baseball player for the Chicago Cubs when I was a kid. So somebody else already had the name, but it is a pretty good name. And I probably, since my real name is Robert, I probably wouldn't have ever been a Robert. I probably would have been a Robbie, like my nephew, or a Bobby. That's my guess anyway. Chris, hello, good to see you. Felicity, a pleasure to see you too. And I think we've got everybody then, or at least everybody who's checked in. So, with no further ado, or at least with minimal ado, I will start reading. I've got my glasses back from the glasses people because I had discovered that my reading glasses only worked when I was like 3.5 feet away from whatever I was looking at, which is like more than twice the distance that I needed them at. So as a result, I had to send them back in and say, no, honestly, I'm not just trying to get a free new pair of lenses. I just can't see my screen properly, and it's giving me headaches. So, all right, I've babbled enough. So let me go forward. One thing that's sad about this, the failure of this particular line of books, was that they did a really beautiful job, I thought. I thought the cover, that's Lucinda. You'll learn more about her later if you haven't read the book. See, Tad Williams and Deborah Beale. This is the first book that came out with both our names on it. And the other thing is, they did really pretty pictures on the chapters, which are really nice. And I'll try to remember to show them to you as we go because they are worthwhile. The artist, Greg Swearingen, definitely deserves the credit because did a great job. Okay, so anyway, now we officially start. Prologue. A handful of small bones. Colin tested the parlor door. It was, as he expected, firmly closed and locked, but he hadn't planned on going in anyway. He got down on his knees and looked through the keyhole. His mother, Gideon, and Mr. Walkwell were meeting in the parlor, where the old stained glass window showed Eve in the Garden of Eden with the apple and the tree and the snake. Gideon had once said that whoever made the window obviously cared little for anything but the snake, and he was right. The creature traveled along the top, down the left-hand side, and then all the way along the bottom. And compared to Eve in the tree, it glowed and sparkled like the showroom window of a fancy jewelry store. The room was hardly ever used. The last time he'd been in there, the dust had made Colin's nose itch something fierce. He immediately wished he had not thought about that, because now his nose was tickling as if the dust was all around him. If he sneezed, well, he didn't want to think about that. He could not afford even one more mistake. His mother was many things. Forgiving was not one of them. Colin clamped his nose in his fingers and held his breath, killing the sneeze by sheer force of will. His mother's punishments were meant to teach him to behave properly, as she always reminded him. He had never understood what that meant. The only thing they taught him was how terrible it was to get caught. He stifled the sneeze at last, no small victory. He let go of his nose and placed his ear against the keyhole. "I've invited 2 people to come to the farm for the summer," Gideon was saying. "They're distant relatives, a niece and nephew, 2 or 3 times removed, or however these things are calculated. Children, too, so perhaps that will be good for Colin." "Outsiders," said Mr. Walkwell gruffly. "That is never good, Gideon." "Interlopers." Colin's mother said it calmly, but the voice was harder than usual. "Not interlopers," snapped Gideon with his usual high impatience. "Relatives of mine, if you please." Mr. Walkwell, the farm's chief overseer, spoke quietly as ever, his up-and-down accent as enigmatic as wind-blown patterns in dust. Colin had to strain to pick out his next words. "But why these outsiders, Gideon, even if they are family? Why now?" "It is my decision," said Gideon crossly. "Are you going to fight me?" "Of course not." Colin heard his mother push back her chair and cross the room. Her approaching steps made him flinch. He almost turned and ran, but she stopped long before she got to the door. She had only risen to rub Gideon's shoulder, something she often did when the master of the farm was upset about something. "We know you must have thought long and hard about this, Gideon," she told him kindly. "But the rest of us don't understand, that's all. And we all care about this place almost as much as you do." "I'm out of options." Gideon's voice sounded raw. "I'm running out of money. I've been getting letters from a lawyer threatening me. There are pressures you do not know about." "Then tell us," Colin's mother said. "We are more than simply your employees, Gideon. You know that." "No, I can't. And stop prying into my business." Which seemed to be all the explanation Gideon was going to give. That was how things usually went with the old man, Colin knew. Yes, that's what he was, an old man full of stupid, selfish secrets. "But his secrets control our lives," the boy thought angrily. "It's not just his farm. We live here too." The great front door of the house rattled and swung open. Colin jumped away from the keyhole and scuttled over to the grand staircase, praying that whoever was coming in would not see him in the shadows there. His heart hammered so hard inside his chest he thought it might break a rib. Then he heard the voice singing softly in German, and he stopped trembling quite so hard. It was only Sarah, the cook, carrying something through the lobby on her way to the kitchen. Another door opened and closed, then all was quiet again. Colin got back to the keyhole in time to hear Gideon talking again. "Our children. I'm glad of it. It will make them easier to control," Mr. Walkwell said. "Or put them in greater danger?" "None of you understand," said Gideon. "I am being hounded, and it is not for the first time either, but I will protect this farm with my life. My life. Silence returned. Colin watched the motes dance in the beams of light spilling across the lobby. It was his mother who spoke at last. "Are you fearful that someone will take the farm away from you? It is difficult, I know, but perhaps—" Even Colin's mother, brave as a lioness, was clearly worried about saying anything more. "Perhaps you should think, just think, mind you, of marrying again." "Are you mad?" Gideon roared. "You forget your place, madam." Suddenly there was a great scraping of chair legs, and Colin, caught by surprise, had to throw himself back from the door and dive toward the shadows beside the staircase again. The parlor door swung open, and Gideon burst out, barefoot, robe flapping, his face red with anger. Mr. Walkwell followed, his emotions as hidden as Gideon's were obvious. A few moments after they had both left the parlor, Gideon stomping through the door that led to his rooms, and Mr. Walkwell, out the front, returning to the farm, Colin's mother appeared, shutting the parlor door behind her as carefully as if she was leaving an invalid's bedchamber. She walked past Colin without looking at the shadows where he stood, then stopped just in front of the door that led toward the kitchen. "Colin," she said without turning, "don't you have better things to be doing than spying on your elders?" For long moments after she had gone through the door, he could do nothing but crouch, breathing hard, feeling as though she had just punched him in the belly. At last he got to his feet and ran after her, despising himself as he did so, but quite unable to stop himself. He would explain, he would tell her it was only an accident. Surely she wouldn't punish him for an accident. But of course she would. He knew that. And she would know it wasn't an accident, no matter how well he lied. She always did. He would tell her he had just been trying to find her. That was mostly true, after all. He had hardly spoken to her or even seen her for several days. Sometimes it seemed like she didn't even remember she had a child. The kitchen was empty. Not even Sarah was there. Colin ran out the door that led to the vegetable garden. The light outside nearly blinded him, and the heat was ferocious. Spring had not even ended, but the California weather had turned perversely, sickeningly hot. He spotted his mother on the far side of the garden, gliding swiftly and gracefully across it, despite the blazing sun. Her strength amazed him, as always, and the longing for her suddenly overwhelmed everything else. "Mother!" he cried. "Please, Mother!" She had to be able to hear him. She was only a few yards away. Tears came into his eyes, and the chasm of nothingness opened inside Colin's chest, an old and all too familiar acquaintance. She hurried on ahead of him across the open yard between the buildings, a mirage in the dust. Where was she going? Into the oak woods that began back there? She was always going off there by herself, or into the ancient greenhouse, or Grace's old sewing room. Why couldn't she just stop for once and talk to him instead? "Mother!" His strangled cry, it seemed, disturbed some of the animals in the sick barn just around the corner. Hoots and cries and screams rose into the gritty air, filling Colin's skull so painfully that everything echoed and throbbed. Something made an unearthly fluting. Some other creature chattered and howled, and something else made a wet, barking sound, like a dog underwater. Colin gasped and covered his ears, trying to protect his poor, pounding brain. "Stop it!" he moaned. "Stop it!" But it did not stop, not for long moments more. Alarmed birds rose from nearby trees, shooting up into the sky. The noises faded at last. His mother had come to a halt a short way into the oak grove, her back to him. As he stumbled up, she turned and silenced him with one look from her gray eyes. Then she turned back to the oak tree she seemed to have chosen, its pale, dry branches as shocked and contorted as bolts of lightning. Most of the green leaves had already withered in the unseasonable heat, which made it hard to see the bird's nest in the crook of one of the high branches. Staring up at the nest, his mother began to sing, a swoop of wordless melody. Colin fell under the spell of it instantly, just as he always did, as he had since infancy. Her voice was as sweet and slow as warm honey. Colin's legs grew weak. Sometimes, when he heard his beautiful, terrible mother sing, he thought he might be hearing the sounds the very first women in all the human race had used to lull their babies and soothe the sick. Her voice was so powerful, so loving, that when she raised it in song like this, he could forgive her anything. The melody went on, sparkling like sound made gold. A bird with black and white shoulders and a lovely red head crept out of the nest and moved cautiously down the bark of the oak tree, her tail flicking this way and that. For a moment she huddled in her own feathers, like someone warming herself in a thick coat. Then she fluttered down onto his mother's outstretched finger and squatted, as if making a curtsy, presenting her glorious wings and neck feathers to be ruffled, bobbing and wobbling comically on the slender finger like a puppy begging to be petted. "Let me hold the bird," said Colin, charmed by the power of his beautiful mother. "Please." The singing stopped. His mother's fingers snapped closed like a trap. In the abrupt silence, the handful of small bones breaking seemed loud as a drum roll. His mother opened her fingers and let the crushed bundle drop to the ground, one wing still fluttering feebly. Colin clamped his hands over his mouth. He should have known. He should have known. "Do you feel better now?" he shouted at her. He wanted to run, but he couldn't. He looked from her to the dying bird. "Does that make you feel better?" He actually wanted to know, that was the terrible thing. As if maybe there actually was a reason for these things. And when he knew it, he could forgive her again. Patience Needle turned her clear gray eyes on her son. "Better," she said. "A little, I suppose." She turned and began to walk briskly back toward the house. "Come along, Colin, and don't dawdle. We still have to decide on an appropriate punishment for a sneaking little spy, don't we?" Chapter 1. An Invitation for the King and Queen of Romania. "You really want to ruin my life, don't you?" said Mom. Tyler was playing his game boss, and so far had managed to stay out of the fight, but his big sister never had the sense to keep her mouth shut. She jumped for any argument like a trout going after a baited hook. "Oh, right, Mom," Lucinda said. "Ruin your life. As if. Just because we don't want you to go away all summer and leave us with some lady who smells like fish and whose kids eat their own boogers." "See, that's what you always do, sweetie," their mother replied. "You always exaggerate. First off, it's not going away all summer. It's a 4-week singles retreat. Second, Mrs. Perro doesn't smell like fish all the time. That one day she was cooking something. That's all. Some Portuguese thing." Mom waved her hand, trying to get her nails to dry. "And I don't know what you have against those kids. They both do really well in school. Martin goes to computer camp and everything. You could learn something from them." Lucinda rolled her eyes. "Martin Perro needs to go to camp for the rest of his life. That's the one place you're allowed to have your name written on your underpants." Tyler turned Skullkill up louder, but he knew it wouldn't do any good. When Mom and Lucinda argued and he tried to drown them out by cranking the volume, they just got louder too. It was hard enough to deal with fast-moving vampire gnomes and flying bat-bots without all that yelling in the background. Good Lord, Tyler, turn that thing down, Mom shouted. No, turn it off. We're going to have a family talk right now. Tyler groaned. Can't you just beat us instead? For a moment, Mom got really angry. Like I ever hit you. You better not say things like that in front of Mrs. Perro and her family. They'll think I'm some kind of negligent mother. She stomped to the door. I'm going to get the mail. When I come back, I want you both sitting on the couch and ready to listen. Tyler sighed. He considered leaving, just walking out and going to Todd's house. What was there to stop him? Mom didn't hit, and Tyler figured he could live through just about any yelling she could come up with. After all, he was pretty sure he'd already heard every kind there was. He glanced at his older sister. She was sitting on the edge of the sofa, her arms wrapped around herself, leaning forward like her stomach hurt. Her expression was despairing. You don't want to go stay with the Perros any more than I do, Tyler, she said to him. Why don't you say something? Because it never does any good. Mom came back in wearing her I'm calm now face, her hands full of catalogs and bills. She sat down in her chair with the mail in her lap. Now, let's start over, shall we? Instead of yelling about what you don't want to do, maybe we can talk about the good things that could come from this situation. Since when, said Lucinda, have there been any good things for this family coming out of any situation? Mom's face clouded, her eyes shut tight. Tyler braced himself, wondering if she was going to yell, wondering if he was going to regret sticking around. But to his surprise, Mom opened her eyes and even tried to smile. Look, I know it's been tough for you since your father and I got divorced. Of course it has. Tyler blew out air. What was the use of talking about it? Talking wasn't going to bring Dad back or make Mom happier, whatever she thought. Talking wasn't going to turn Lucinda back into the older sister who used to make him dinner when Dad first left, who would cook macaroni and cheese and eat it with him on the nights when Mom couldn't do anything but watch television and cry. And, of course, it's difficult for kids when their mother wants a little time on her own, their mother said. All the way across the room, Tyler could feel Lucinda struggling not to start yelling again. It's a singles retreat, their mother continued. It isn't anything sleazy. It's safe, and it's a perfectly nice place to meet people. Lucinda lost the battle with herself. God, don't be so desperate, Mom. It's pathetic. Tyler watched Mom's face go all loose and miserable, and his stomach clenched. Sometimes these days he felt like he hated his sister. Lucinda saw Mom's expression too, and her face filled with shame. But it was too late. The words had been spoken. Mom picked up the mail and began shuffling through it, but it was like she had suddenly gotten old and exhausted. Tyler felt sick. She might not be the greatest parent in the world, but she did her best. She just sort of lost focus sometimes. Bills, said Mom, sighing. Bills, that's all we get. Why can't we stay with Dad? Tyler asked suddenly. Because your father is in a very important place right now with his new family. Or at least that's what he says. She frowned. Personally, I think it's because that woman has him completely wrapped around her finger. He doesn't want us, and you don't want us, said Lucinda miserably. 2 parents alive, but we're still orphans. Tyler watched, almost impressed, as Mom calmed herself once more. She must have started reading those parenting magazines again. Of course I want you, she said. And I understand that you guys are angry, but since your father left, it's been hard. I can't be both parents all by myself. How can I find someone else if I spend all my time sitting home in my bathroom doing nothing but arguing with my kids? But why do you have to find someone? Asked Lucinda. Why? Because it's a tough world out there, and because I get lonely, you know? Mom gave them both her most sincere, brave, but about to cry look. Can't you two just help me out for once? By disappearing? Demanded Lucinda, losing it all over again. By moving into Castle Stinkfoot and spending the whole summer watching Martin and Anthony play Star Wars and take turns bubbling milk out their noses? Jeez, Mom rolled her eyes. Who are you two, the king and queen of Romania? Can't you ever do anything that isn't exactly what your highnesses want? She paused, staring at the open letter in her lap. Gideon? I don't remember any Uncle Gideon. Lucinda had picked up the family cat and was holding it on her lap, even though he didn't really seem to want to be there. When Lucinda was upset, she petted the cat so much that Tyler figured someday she'd just rub the fur right off him. Isn't there anyone else we can stay with? She asked. Why can't I stay with Caitlin? Her family said it's okay. Because they don't have room to take Tyler too, and I'm not having him go stay at the neighbor's by himself, said Mom, but she was reading the letter and not paying much attention to them. She lifted the envelope and looked at it, then went back to the letter again. Tyler scowled. I'd rather watch Martin Perro eat boogers than have to sit around listening to you and Caitlin talk about boys all summer. His sister and her friends spent all their time talking about the guys on television, musicians and actors, as if they knew them personally, and about boys in school as if they were the guys on television. Oh, I think Barton isn't ready to have a real relationship yet. He's still getting over Marley. Tyler hated it. He wished there was a game where you could chase stupid, fakey celebrity boys like that and shoot them all into little pieces. That would rock. Well, maybe you won't have to do either. Mom was looking strange the way she looked when someone was giving her good news she didn't quite believe. Like the time Tyler's teacher had told her how much she liked having Tyler in her class, how hard he worked in math, and how good he was on the computer. Tyler had been proud, but at the same time, his mom's surprise made him wonder if she'd actually thought he was stupid or something. Apparently, you have a great Uncle Gideon. Gideon Goldring. Some relative of my dad's, I guess. I sort of remember him and Aunt Grace, now that I think about it. But he's dead, isn't he? She obviously realized this sounded pretty silly. I thought he was dead. It's been years. He's a farmer, it says here, and he has a big place out in the middle of the state. And he wants you to come visit. Standard Valley, it's called. Not sure exactly where that is. She trailed off. What valley? His sister asked. Who's this Gideon? Some crazy old family member, and you're going to send us to stay with him now? No, he's not crazy. But you don't know that. Stop it, Lucinda. Just give me a moment to read this carefully. You obviously learned how to be patient from your father. Mom squinted at the letter. It says that he's been meaning for a while to get in touch with me, since we're almost the last of his family. He says he's sorry he hasn't contacted me sooner, and he says he understands that I have 2 lovely children. Ha! Mom did her best sarcastic laugh. That's what it says here. I wonder who told him that whopper. And he wants to know if that's you two, could come and spend some time with him on this farm this summer. She looked up. Well, that solves all our problems, doesn't it? Lucinda looked at her in horror. A farm? We'll be slaves, Mom. You don't even know this man. You said so. He might not really be your uncle. Maybe he just wants kids so he can work them to death milking cows and pigs and everything. I'm pretty sure he's related to your grandfather, and you can't milk pigs. Mom returned her attention to the letter. I don't think so, anyway. So now you're going to send us away to some death ranch, Lucinda said, and then she dropped her hair over her face and clutched her arms around her middle again. Tyler didn't like arguing, but he wasn't any happier about this idea than his sister. Not a ranch, a farm. He had a sudden memory of the picture he'd seen in his American history book, a decaying shack in the middle of a huge field of dust, a place as empty as the moon's surface. No way. He didn't think they had the internet on farms. He was even more sure they didn't have Game Boss and Skull Kill. I'm definitely not going to any boring farm all summer. He crossed his arms over his chest. Don't be so close-minded, said Mom, as though they were talking about whether or not he should try a bite at something gross like fried squid, instead of ruining an entire summer that they'd never get back for the rest of their lives. Who knows? You might really enjoy yourselves. You could go on hay rides. You might even learn something. Yeah, said Lucinda. Learn how to be pecked to death by chickens. Learn how people break child labor laws. Tyler leaned forward and snatched the envelope from Mom's hand and examined the strange, squinchy handwriting. On the back of the envelope was a little drawing of two old-fashioned letters tangled together. They looked like an O and an F, and a return address that explained those two letters and confirmed all his worst fears. Mom, look at this, he said, holding it out. Oh my God, look at the name of this place. Ordinary Farm. Yes, it does sound nice, doesn't it? She said. Chapter 2. Flaming Cows and Window Monkeys. And whoops, hang on. There's the picture of the train. Sorry if I sound like I'm treating you like kids. I don't mean that. I just like showing the pictures because somebody spent a lot of time on them and they're really nice. Chapter 2, Flaming Cows and Window Monkeys. Mom was in such a hurry to get them to the station that Lucinda forgot her hairdryer. She couldn't imagine how she was going to get through the summer without a hairdryer, and she was pretty sure that they wouldn't have something that modern and useful on some stinky old farm in the middle of nowhere. Don't worry about it too much, Tyler told her as they walked across the train station parking lot. They probably won't have electricity either. Mom looked at her watch 3 times between the parking lot and the platform where the big board said the train to Willowside would leave. Come on, Cindy told her. Would it really kill you to be a little late to this singles thing? This is probably the last time you'll ever see your children before we get mangled to death by some kind of farm machinery. I'm not even leaving for that until tomorrow morning, as it happens, said Mom. I'm just worried about you getting on your train. She grabbed one of Tyler's backpack straps to get him to move faster, but Tyler yanked it away again. It's the only one for days that stops in Standard Valley. I don't think it's a very big town. Oh, good, there it is. Come on, children, give me a kiss. Don't forget to write and tell me all about it. I'll find out the address of the retreat and have Mrs. Fleener next door forward your mail to me. Which means that when we write to tell you we're prisoners of a Satan cult and they're about to sacrifice us, you'll find out what, 2 or 3 weeks later? Lucinda asked, only half joking. It was like they were Hansel and Gretel abandoned in the woods or something. You kids, you're so funny. Mom shook her head. You know, if you stop complaining, you just might enjoy yourselves. Now, give me that kiss. Lucinda kissed her mother on the cheek, even though she was angry, just in case it was the last time they ever saw each other. She didn't really think they were going to get chewed up by a haymower or something, but she couldn't help feeling frightened and sad. And the fact that she was tall enough now that Mom didn't have to bend over to be kissed just made her feel even more of both. Hurry, kids! Oh, and here's something that came in the mail from you for your uncle, from your uncle. Hurry, kids! Oh, and here's something that came in the mail for you from your Uncle Gideon. I almost forgot. Mom handed the parcel wrapped in brown paper to Tyler, since he was nearest, then blew them both a kiss and stood smiling brightly as they climbed onto the train. When they got into the compartment, Lucinda went to the window. Mom waved to her as the train began to pull away. Lucinda waved back, but it made her feel like a dumb kid, like standing in line for Santa at the mall when you were too old. You don't even have any breadcrumbs to leave a trail, she thought sadly as the station disappeared behind them. And no one's coming to look for us anyway. The train was old, with paint chipped off the walls of the coaches and the seats sunken and wrinkled by what had to be hundreds of years of other people's bodies. It made Lucinda want to stand up all the way. But Mom had said it would take them at least 5 hours to get to Standard Valley, so she led her brother to the least gross-looking of the available seats. The compartment was fairly full, mostly with people in clothes that didn't quite fit or who looked like English was their second or even third language. Many of them looked pretty miserable. Or maybe that was because that was how she felt. Sometimes Lucinda really wished she knew how to stop being sad and angry. They were a long way into their journey before either of them remembered the package Mom had given them. Tyler had been plugged into his Game Boss portable. He loved the thing and could play it for hours at a stretch, deaf and blind to the outside world. Lucinda, eyes closed, had been thinking mournfully about the summers her friends were going to have. Caitlin and her family going to Tyner Lake to water ski and swim and hike. And Trina and Delia, who, even though they were staying home, were still going to the city and taking guitar lessons. The two of them would probably learn to be musicians and wind up on television someday, hanging around with all the other famous people and appearing on commercials, while Lucinda spent the rest of her life shearing sheep. This is pretty weird, Tyler said. He had found and unwrapped the package. What? There's a note in it. It says, Lucinda and Tyler, please read this and pay close attention. It could save your lives. What does that mean? A note in what? This book Uncle What's-His-Name sent. Gideon. Huh? Tyler was turning the pages of the book now. Never mind. She looked over, almost interested, but it didn't look like a real book. It had a kind of paper cover for one thing, like someone had made it at a copier place. Lucinda watched the tail end of a town going past the train windows. Everything looks gross from a train window, she thought. You could see into everybody's backyard, and they always had their laundry hanging out in some pathetic, rusty old swing set for the kids. Something flicked past the window so quickly that Lucinda jumped, startled. She thought it had actually brushed the glass. A bird, probably. Do cows have fire breath? Tyler asked. It took a second for her to understand what he'd said. What are you talking about? She said finally. Just answer the question. In real life? She frowned, thinking. She didn't actually know much about cows. Milk? Gross-looking things hanging down underneath them that the milk came out of? Saying moo? Standing around in fields, eating grass. None of those things had anything to do with fire. No, she said. Of course they don't. Man, this is a really weird book. Lucinda tried to take it from him to look at it, but he pulled it away from her. Back off! I had it first. She was too depressed to argue. There would be plenty of time for arguing later anyway. All summer long, in fact. She put her feet on top of her suitcase and picked up the brown paper wrapping that Tyler had discarded. The neat handwriting was different from the cramped scrawl in the original letter, which both she and Tyler had read several times, trying to decide if this farm visit was actually going to be as bad as they thought, or maybe even worse. The package was addressed to Master Tyler Jenkins and Miss Lucinda Jenkins, which was so silly it almost made her laugh. Along the bottom, in big letters, it said, "Do not open until you are on the train to Standard Valley." The back had the same OF stamp as had been on the letter. Different handwriting. What did that mean? That their surprised great-uncle wasn't the only crazy person they were going to have to deal with? "Hey, listen," Tyler said. "This is so bizarre. It should never be forgotten, even in the most routine tasks of care and feeding, that these animals are large and dangerous. Even a belch from a contented cow can throw out a 6-foot flame. Many cow keepers have remembered this only after being badly burned. Flame retardant suits and other special equipment are recommended for all tasks." He turned to her. "That means they can burp fire." "What are you talking about? Does the book really say that they are flaming cows?" Now she was beginning to feel seriously nervous. "This guy is crazy. We need to get off this train." "What's asbestos? Because you're supposed to wear some kind of gloves made of it when you feed the cows." "Asbestos?" Lucinda shook her head. I don't know. Let me see that." "Forget it. Give it to me or you won't get any of the money Mom gave me for lunch." "That's not your money." "That's not just your book either. It's addressed to both of us." He only glared back at her. "Come on, Tyler. Let me look at it. This is scaring me." He stared for a moment longer, then handed it over. It was floppy and heavy, and up close it really did look like someone had gone to Kinko's or somewhere like that to make it themselves. The cover, which was on even cheaper paper than the rest of it, said, "Care and Feeding of Cows" by Gideon Goldring. She opened it up. The very first page said, "Some may wonder why I would write this book when so few people will ever have so much as the glimpse of a cow, let alone take care of one. But the sort of information contained herein is hard won and should not be lost. I am no longer a young man, and it could be that I will not be around to share all my knowledge with whoever shall follow me. Therefore, I commit it to writing, in hopes that those who are to come will see their cows not only survive, but thrive and fly high." "Fly high?" Lucinda looked at Tyler. "He is crazy. He's really crazy." "You're telling me. Wait until you get to the part about catching them. It's all about putting nets in the top of trees and stuff." Lucinda peered at the page. "Hold on. This didn't used to say cow, I don't think." She stared, then rubbed at the paper with her finger. "Before they copied it, somebody went through this and put cow in over some other word. See, it's shorter than the original word. There's a lot of white on either side." "Yeah, you're right. Here and here too, and here." Tyler leafed forward a couple of pages. "All the places that say cow used to say something else." He looked at his sister. "What's that all about?" "I don't know. I'm just wondering if we have enough money to get home if we get off in the next town." She took the money out of her purse and counted it. $20. Do you think that's enough?" "It's not enough. It's enough to get us lunch and a couple of Cokes." Something slid past the window again outside, a little swipe of shadow. But when Lucinda looked up, she saw nothing but the endless, dry California valley slipping past.
I can't believe Mom, she said, sending us off to some crazy man who thinks cows breathe fire. And she doesn't even give us enough money to get home again if he tries to kill us or something. As soon as we get to the next stop, I'm going to call her to come get us. Tyler laughed, but he wasn't happy. Then you better work on your Star Wars trivia because she'll take us straight to the Perra's house. Martin and Anthony are going to spend all summer quizzing you about what kind of underpants Boba Fett wears. Lucinda shuddered. People always said she was too negative. Her teachers even asked her why she never tried to see the good side of things. But this was proof right here that no matter how bad you thought things were going to be, they turned out even worse. For once, Tyler was right. Arguing wouldn't help. There was no escape. Well, she said, I guess being killed by an exploding cow fireball will be less horrible than having to watch the Perro twins in their battling action figures. Tyler laughed. Lucinda almost felt better. Then something brushed her window again, and this time she looked up just in time to see a tiny furry head, no bigger than a kiwi fruit, looking in at her from the top of the window. For a moment it seemed even more bizarre than it was, its mouth at the top and its eyes at the bottom, until she realized the creature must be hanging upside down on the side of the train like a bat, watching her. She even thought she could see the tip of a leathery wing pressed on the glass. But it wasn't a bat. Tyler? She stared right at it, certain that if she looked away it would disappear. Tyler, there's a monkey on the train. It disappeared anyway, flipping away like a leaf blown from a car windshield. Yeah, it's you, he said, not really paying attention. Whoa, do you think we'll really get to see some cows explode? Like in Farm Frag? He grinned and put in his earbuds and said way too loud, maybe it will be an okay summer after all. I've never seen a real cow blow up. The monkey face was gone from her window, but now everyone else in the compartment was staring at Lucinda and her brother. She shrank down in her seat and held the strange book in front of her face. Had she only imagined what she'd seen? Because outside of movies, she was pretty darn sure there weren't any such thing as flying monkeys. Of course, there weren't any such things as fire-breathing cows either. Lucinda tried to focus on the words on the page, but that wasn't working. She couldn't help wondering whether the summer ahead was going to be as boring as she'd first thought, terrifyingly weird, or somehow both at the same time. And that's where we're going to stop for tonight at the end of the second chapter. So that was prologue and 2 chapters down. Anyway, I hope that you guys are enjoying it. As I said, it's an all-ages book, meaning it's also suitable for children of a slightly strange turn of mind, but I don't think there's anything in there that would upset or freak any of them out. But on the other hand, certainly Deb and I, when we were writing it, were not trying to write down to anybody. We were just trying to write a book that people of different ages would enjoy. So I hope if you haven't read it, I hope you will stick with me and at least hear the rest of the first volume, and whether we'll read the second volume. Actually, at some point I might read the second volume because it also won't be that long. And since I haven't finished the third volume, I don't have to worry that I'm killing my own market by reading the entirety of my book, or books or stories to people for public consumption. Anyway, so we have now come to the end of the evening. I am disappointed to be here with you still with the pandemic going on around us. It may not be as bad where you guys are as it is still here, where we seem to have a problem with elementary problems of logic. Let's put it that way. Elementary problems in logic, and in fact, elementary science problems in general seem to be an issue in the United States at the moment. But
That's, I think, really all I need to say. I am, however, very pleased that we are getting to spend some time together again. So thank you for joining me for this earlier time slot. I will be back to read the next 2 chapters later today at 7 p.m. California time. And then I will return at this time, same time. Again, now it's 1 o'clock my time instead of 2 o'clock my time. I'll be returning next week to continue. And we will have more of the Dragons of Ordinary Farm. So, until that point, take good care of yourselves. Continue to do that. Take good care of your loved ones and your close friends and all of those folks. But keep an eye out for other people too, because not everybody has loved ones and close friends. But they may still need a helping hand sometimes. So, again, I thank you, and good night. Be well. Love you all.